Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about all things fractions. So that's going to be looking at the concept of fractions, so what fractions are, why they are, and why we use them, where we do. So fractions are extremely helpful through your math studies. They are really useful. I'd say they're probably even more useful than decimals because they're a lot easier to work out in your head. We're going to be looking at unit fractions, fractions as whole numbers, fractions with whole numbers. We're also going to be looking at improper fractions as well. We're going to be looking at what a fraction is made up of. So we're going to be looking at a really comprehensive, basic fractions guide. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I've got my water, I've got my pen and my paper. Let's get into the video. Okay, so as I said before, fractions are incredibly useful. You will use them both in your head and on paper all the time throughout your maths studies. They are really useful. If you get a good grasp of them, a really good understanding of them now, it will make it so much easier all throughout your maths studies. So, what are fractions? So, fractions are whole numbers split up into lots of different little pieces. If you imagine a slice of pizza, for example, there's your pizza, badly drawn. This pizza at the moment, there's no cuts, no slices in it. It's a whole pizza. It's one whole pizza. However, I can halve the pizza, can't I? If I want to share, that is. Normally I eat my pizza all to myself. But if I want to share my pizza, I can cut it in half and I can share it with one other person. That would mean I've halved my pizza. So it's gone from being one pizza to two half pizzas. So what I've done is I've divided my pizza from one into two. So it's become two separate slices. So my two halves are going to make my whole. If I put my two halves back together again, they're then a whole pizza. So I can do the same thing again. I've halved it again. So I've halved it once, halved it twice. Now I've got 4 pieces of pizza. Now I'm being very generous. So I've got 4 pieces of pizza now, 4 quarters of a pizza. This is a quarter. There's your quarter, so I've got 4 quarters. I've got one whole, changed it into 2 halves. Now I've split it into 4 quarters. So this is exactly what fractions is. It's taking one whole piece and splitting it up into little pieces. You can do the same with anything. You can do it with food, you can do it with liquids, you can do it with literally anything you could possibly think of. You can split into little pieces and it becomes smaller and smaller. So what is a fraction then? So we'll take a half, for example. That's our half, 1/2. So what this symbol represents is you've got 1, you've divided it by 2. So this symbol is essentially saying that you've divided this by this. So when you divide 1 by 2, you get a half. You get 0.5 in decimals, or a half. This symbol here, anything on the top of a fraction is called a numerator. And that's how you spell it, numerator. So that is anything that's on the top of your fraction. On the bottom of your fraction, the denominator. So you've got your numerator on the top and your denominator on the bottom. And that is what your fraction is made up of. A numerator, a line, and a denominator. So you don't just have to have even numbers on the bottom either. You can have odd numbers. You can have even numbers on the top, odd numbers on the top, even numbers on the bottom, odd numbers on the bottom. It really doesn't matter. Fractions can represent any number. All I've done at the moment is I've done wholes, and I've done halves, I've done quarters. So this is going in stages. So I've had my whole, I split it once, I split it twice. That's even. So what if we do something odd? What if we take, for example, a third? What's a third, you might ask? Well, a third is when you split something into 3 pieces. So if I had a chocolate bar and I split it into 3 even pieces, I'd never split my chocolate either. I personally like to keep my chocolate to myself, but I'm feeling generous at the moment, so I'll split my chocolate with 2 other people. So I've got 1, 2, 3 slices. One for me and one for the 2 friends that I'm giving my chocolate to. So I will have 1/3. My other friend will have 1/3, and my other friend will have 1/3. So we've each got 1/3 of the chocolate. The chocolate's been split into 3 equal pieces. So you can have the same with a 5th, a 6th, a 7th, an 8th, a 9th, a 10th, and it goes on and on and on and on. But what if I gave 1/3 to my friend and I kept 2 of them for myself? So what if I just gave the top one to someone else and I kept these 2 for myself? What would I have then? I would have 2 of the thirds. So in this case, you'd represent this by saying 2/3. I've kept 2 of the third. So now my other friend has 1/3 and I have 2/3. But what if I was to keep all 3 pieces? Well, then in that case, I'd have 3/3. Because I've got 3/3, I have a whole. I still have the entire chocolate bar, so I've been very greedy. You have what's called equivalent fractions as well. So now we've learned about what the fraction is, what it's made up of, and how it works. I'll tell you what equivalent fractions are. What equivalent fractions are is what fractions are actually the same value. So if I had 1/10, it's actually equal to 10 over 100. And the reason that is because as a fraction, 1 over 10 is a 10th. It's 10%. I've got 1 slice of 10 pieces. But if I've got 10 slices out of 100 pieces, that's going to equal the same amount. And you can show this with using the numbers by what we call cancelling out. And what cancelling out is when you've got a 0 on the top and a 0 on the bottom, you can cancel out those zeros. 0 and 0. Because the zeros don't mean anything at the end. There's nothing there. So we can cancel those 2 out. And look, that leaves us with 1 over 10. And you can do the same if you've got really big numbers. So if I say 4,000 over 5,000 is the same as 400 over 500, because both of these can be cancelled out. So what we can do is we can cancel out the end zeros, right? 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom cancelled out. 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. And that's going to leave us with 4 over 5. We can do the same over here. Cancel out 1 on the top, cancel out 1 on the bottom, 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. Again, we've got 4 over 5. So we're proving now that these 2 numbers, these 2 fractions, mean exactly the same thing. And you can do that even further now. Not just by cancelling out, but by what we call simplifying fractions. And what simplifying a fraction does is it makes it easier for us to interpret and understand the fraction. So if I have 30 over 36, you can use your times tables to see if these 2 numbers, the 30 and the 36, are related in any way. Now I know from my times tables that the 30 and the 36 are both part of the 6 times table. So what I can do is I can simplify it by dividing the top number and the bottom number by 6. And as long as you do exactly the same thing to the top number, the numerator, as you do to the bottom number, the denominator, you'll never go wrong. I will divide the top by 6 and divide the bottom by 6. 30 divided by 6 is going to be 5. 36 divided by 6 is 6. So we know that 30 over 36 is the same as 5 over 6. So that is how you simplify fractions. This is just as much simplifying as this is. This is just by cancelling out zeros. This is by simplifying the number by dividing the number. Now you can do that with anything. For example, 12 over 24. They're both part of the 12 times table. They're both part of the 2 times table. We could do the 2 times table, for example. We could half them. We can half numbers because they're both even. So we can half the 12 and half the 24. 6 over 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 24 divided by 2 is 12. And then we can also half them again. We need to get something down so we can't divide it at all anymore. So we're going to do 6 divided by 2 and 12 divided by 2, 3 over 6. Now, 3 is a prime number. We can't divide it by anything. However, 3 does go into 6 2 times. So we can actually simplify 3 over 6 to a half. We can actually go backwards. 1/2 times it by 3 times 1 by 3 times 2 by 3 becomes 3. 2 becomes 6, and you can double that to become 6 over 12 and double that to become 12 over 24. They all mean the same thing. They're all the same number. If you turn them into decimals, they're all going to be the same number. They're all going to be 0.5 in decimals because they're all a half. They're just different ways of writing a half. These two numbers are exactly the same. If you converted these into decimals, they're exactly the same. However, this one is a simplified version of this one, and you should always aim to write your fractions in simplified terms. Always. But always remember the golden rule: whatever you do to the top, do to the bottom. Do not forget that. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you've learned something about fractions. I hope this has given you enough information on fractions. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Thanks.